we are going to speak with the team at GE that created an innovation lab, which is designed to bring user-centric thinking to mass transit. So we have Richard Baker, who's Global Director of User Experience. And we have Ryan Leveille, is that correct? Leveille? Yeah. That's Leveille, who is Global Design Manager. So first, I wanted you guys to kind of like maybe describe a little bit about the program that you created at GE.
So one of the ways we describe it is it's three kind of pillars. We looked at our innovation program as a physical space that we could co-create with our customers, a digital platform where we could track and manage all the ideas coming in and out, and then design thinking as a process.
So where did the idea of the lab come from? What was the inspiration behind it?
For me, it was a lot of things. I'll try to roll it up into four. At the highest level, I think our company and our industry, we wanted to remain relevant. There's a lot of disruption happening in the transportation industry, as a lot of people are aware. There's drones, autonomous trucking, battery-powered everything, electrification. So there are a lot of adjacent threats for the industry. So for GE, we needed to remain relevant. Last year, our CEO challenged all of the leaders, and this was fun, to $100 million in net new revenue. We knew we weren't going to do that with our existing product portfolio, so we needed to have a massive idea generation platform. To get tactical, we needed a place to where we could track and manage ideas from tens of thousands of engineers, subject matter experts, customers, users. And I think more personally for me, it was just to work on a lot of cool stuff with a lot of cool people.
So what were some of your challenges when it comes to rolling this out across such a large organization?
So one challenge we had is through adoption. So you know, GE is a really old business, and we have a lot of traditional processes. So getting that mindset through folks was pretty challenging. Plus, you know, our existing NPI process, our new product introduction process, was all centered around, did I spend the money? So if at the end of the year you spent your full innovation budget, let's say you spent $1 million and you didn't have a product to show for it, that's okay. Let's just get another $1 million. So when your metric is did you spend versus did you succeed, you know, getting that shift, it was certainly a challenge.
I think for me, there was a lot of legacy thinking. You know, our company, our industry is 100 years old or more. Legacy processes, waterfall software development. So for me, it was more of a people thing.
Can you explain the dynamics? So you guys have this internal innovation lab. How are you working with clients? What does that relationship look like?
Yeah, so we bring them into the lab to co-create on new ideas, new solutions with them. We leverage design thinking exercises, future casting type things.
So one of the things we were, you know, it was important to us is to get an external space outside of the GE office, outside of customer offices. So we have this, you know, co-working space where we can bring all of our customers in, and it's kind of neutral ground for everybody. And it kind of puts people at ease and also kind of gets them separated from their day-to-day distractions, so we can all collectively work on, you know, working on these kind of crazy solutions.
So what are some examples of the kinds of problems that you guys are working on for some of your clients?
Specifically for like applications, we're looking to solve scheduling for trains across an entire network for the United States globally, pacing trains, so optimizing their fuel economy, things like that.
And then on the macro side of things, we're challenging entire business models. So how do our customers get ahead of the market? You know, they're already pretty far behind. So how do they catch up and then go ahead and transform the industry and get ahead and still stay competitive in that process?
So who are, like when you talk about your clients, I imagine are your clients transportation authorities? Are they, who are your clients? Are they, is it Amtrak? Can you tell us?
Yeah, no, so primarily it's railroads. So there's, you know, in North America you have different classes of railroads. So class 1 are large, your big 7-class railroads like CSX and Norfolk Southern, those kind of things. And then there's, literally hundreds of short lines. So that's kind of the last couple miles of that freight journey. We do also have a number of passenger, but not quite as many. We do focus mostly on freight customers.
So on the client side, what are the kind of range of roles and skill sets that you work with for your clients?
So we really work with everyone, all the way from the C-suite down to the individual contributors, to the people routing trains, to people servicing the trains or pulling pins as these rail cars are going through a classification line and they pull pins to actually break apart. So we're fortunate to be able to work with all different walks of our customers to see every single piece of the process and really get a feel for how real work gets done.
Is this an area that both of you already have deep knowledge about? Is it something that you had to learn?
For transportation, or I came from oil and gas at GE, so I started at GE Transportation about 2 years ago.
And no, for me, I've been with transportation for about 5 years total. It was probably a year in with transportation before I ever rode my first train. But one of the things that we pride ourselves on, the team that we've built, is nobody really has this transportation background. Instead, we focus on a well-rounded cross-functional background in all different kinds of industries. So we have architects, and we have mechanical engineers, and industrial designers, and all the different viewpoints that we can bring in to kind of generate these really outside-of-the-box ideas.
Can you talk a little bit about user research? How do you go out? It seems like you have a broad spectrum of different end users, whether they be internal people like working on the trains, or end passengers. What are some of the methodologies that you use to collect information from your users?
So we use about everything. As Richard said, we have everything from the C-suite down to the individual contributor. I'd say one of the struggles for us that I think about a lot is there's a huge stat in the industry where 50% of the workforce are going to be retiring in the next year. And there's a huge generational gap. So there's about 2 decades of generation that we're going to lose 30 years of industry expertise. So it's tough to try to go and co-create new solutions for users that don't yet exist. So a lot of times what we're trying to do is go out onto just the environment and test with millennials who are going to be taking over these roles. So we have to balance getting feedback from folks that have 30 years of experience but have been working on mainframe screens and paper with the folks that are going to have no experience come in and take those jobs over. So we do everything from A/B testing in the field to contextual research out in the environment. We get on trains, we get into control towers, map out their journey from a full day, so pretty much everything.
One of the big things that we found very helpful is workshops. That's been so helpful to get the C-suite folks convinced, right, as they get into this process. And normally they always start these workshops pretty hesitant. We've had a number of experiences where they just raise their hand and they say, "This is dumb." Like they literally try to shut down the workshop and say this is dumb. But by the end, normally these are 4 8-hour workshops, but it's at the end of it, they get the value and they say, "Hey, this was really helpful. It took me some time to get there, but I get it." And that really helps the buy-in, because everybody in the transportation industry, a lot of people in the transportation industry, they understand the challenges that they have, but they don't necessarily get the solutions, and they don't necessarily understand that the solutions are not necessarily the immediate solution, but you need to go a couple blocks down to kind of get that future thing and then map it back. So workshops for us has been really helpful just to transition that buy-in for the executives.
When it comes to prototyping for end users, how do you deal with data? Do you use sample data, or what does your prototyping process look like?
We do a little bit of both. So we have a lot of sample data, but we also do a lot of dummy data. And it kind of changes over time, where we'll just make stuff up in the beginning. But we have a lot of kind of saved screens and saved pieces of data that we'll remap. But one of the interesting things we've discovered is, by the time you do have a prototype that you're showing to end users or to executives, and in the railroad industry, most of the executives have started in the field. So it's a very traditional workforce where they've all kind of worked their way up. So as soon as you show a prototype that looks fairly realistic and there's something wrong, maybe you're listing a rail car in feet rather than inches or something like that, they'll call you on it. It's like, oh, that rail car is 80 feet, not 80.5 feet. Like that, it's to that level. So as our prototypes evolve in fidelity, we have to also really check with our data, because otherwise that just, they can't separate out reality from prototypes.
Can you talk a little bit about maybe the overall impact that this innovation lab has had on maybe GE as a whole or within transportation? What's changed for you guys?
I think GE as a whole, I think we've had a lot of cross-pollination on some of our other businesses showcasing this program approach, so comprehensive approach to innovation in industrialized industries. For our customers, I think bringing design thinking to them, bringing them into these workshops, while a lot of times they're reluctant, like Richard said, towards the ends of these workshops, we have videotapes and just tons of footage of how excited they are about the future and the possibility of recreating or reimagining their future. So design thinking has been huge for them. We have I think we just built a video this past week that showcases interviews an executive at a customer, and he says, I thought we had this simple problem that we needed to put a robot in place to pull a brake pin to bleed the brakes. But through the design thinking process for a couple days, there was a lot of tough questions that made me very uncomfortable. But I realized that we have to create some sort of a leap, and that we don't even need the robots to pull those pins. We may not even need brakes on our trains. So it's been pretty powerful for our customers.
That's cool. Yeah.
We're also starting to see our customers make these design thinking workshops and the process in general a requirement to doing business with us. So we had one customer that came and said, hey, we want GE to help us with this, but only if it can run through the innovation lab. And there was some scheduling, and they said, okay, that's fine, we'll wait. So it's starting to resonate, and it's starting to really help them understand the problem and solution phases.
Just to follow up on that, even internally, it's been huge at GE Transportation. So a lot of times they bring us late into the game. They think they've already got a problem, got a solution, figured it out, just go do a UI to whatever this is, right? Some user stories. We've gotten all the way up front into the commercial process. So now they're bringing us in and making sure that we're going to go through design thinking first, validating proof of concepts, piloting that solution with real data. So that's been really powerful for us to make sure we're solving the right problems, building the right solutions up front versus bringing us in at the end.
So I think we have 2 minutes left. I want to open this up for any questions.
Okay.
Microphone's getting passed.
Excuse me.
How did you land on the 4 to 8 hour workshop time?
So executives are pretty tricky to pin down. So we start with 3 days, and they say no. And so we said, okay, that's fine. 2 days, and they say no. And so it's really, what can we get? And then we've kind of honed the approach and the process down to, what's the bare minimum that we can still get to the right outcome.
So you guys work on internal projects, right? So do you ever have issue with budgeting? Because normally when we think about internal projects, it's about maintaining or saving money. So it's not like creating new thing to create revenue. So how you talk to your manager or someone to solve that, the budgeting issue?
So that was certainly a challenge. But the way we approached it was, one, it's, hey, this is an investment. And, you balance that out with the industry is changing so rapidly. If we continue down this path, it's not going to just materialize out of thin air, right? We have to invest in that process, and then we were also able to put it, kind of pare it down into some very small chunks and say, well, look, we can do these engagements in very short amount of time, so they're kind of manageable and schedulable, and then we can do the balance of, hey, this is customer projects where we're actually contributing to our bottom dollar and bottom revenue, and then we can also balance that with some internal improvement processes. And then there was a lot of, and Ryan's probably the biggest problem that I have, there's a lot of, we just did it, and later, executives found out, but by the time they found out, they're like, oh, well, I really like this. Like, okay, well, then we'll keep doing it, right? So it's a little bit of do it and then get permission later.
Yeah, I've gotten in trouble a lot for that. I think the great thing is that we've got a lot of successes to point to as well. So over the past year and a half, I think we've come up with four new product ideas. 2 of them are currently being developed. So showing the power of spending a couple extra weeks, months up front through this design thinking approach, user experience. We've been able to generate net new products in a couple months where we've seen, like Richard said at the beginning, we give a product team $1 million and they go a year down the road and got nothing to show for it. So we've got some great proof points to go back to our executives to kind of show that this is the right way to go do this.
And right now, just at a year and a half, our ROI is about 1,300%. So it's pretty good.